now. So kind of crazy stuff, but it is what it is, as they say. So hope you're doing well. And let me check something real quick. Yep, hope you guys are doing well and that everything's good in your world. It's almost the weekend, I guess. If you want to see it that way, right? It's Wednesday. It's kind of my Thursday, so that makes me happy. I got everything set up. Sorry. Realized I wasn't set up quite properly. Still getting used to some things we're doing here. Anyway, man, it's great to see you guys today and be with you. Looking forward to what's going on. And here we go. We're in Titus chapter 2. Paul is now moved from kind of instructing the pastor as what he ought to do to instructing the pastor as to what his congregation ought to do. So he's moving from the pastor to the people in that sense, and having and just dealing with some issues. So he starts by telling Titus what he ought to be teaching the various age groups in his church and gender. And so we looked at that last week, or yesterday rather. Just the concept of what it looks like to teach is a different word there. It means to talk, like to counsel is really what he's saying. He's not saying you're going to preach these things. He's saying you're going to take the truth that you have preached and you're going to flesh it out in their lives. And so this is where Paul is given some priority to things. And so today we look at older women. But let's just kind of slow down for a minute and look at what he said. In chapter 2, let's start at the beginning. He says, "But as for you, proclaim the things which are fitting for sound doctrine." That's why it says proclaim there instead of teach. It means you keep talking about these things, right? The goal of teaching is change, not information. We tend to think it's about collecting information, but it's not. It's about change. We teach in order to change. And so what he's saying here is, you've done the teaching and you're doing the teaching. Now make sure you keep proclaiming these things, that the application, the change of that comes out in this form. And so he starts by talking about just general qualities that people should have. I love the practicality of this and how powerful this is. And so he begins by speaking to the older men and the older women. Now, I am one of those. Some of you are as well. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, man, as you get older, you realize, certain things you can do and can't do, and certain things were easier than others. But life goes on. There's much advantage to getting older. I often wish that I could have been this old when I was raising my kids, because you see things differently, right? I mean, in the middle of raising kids and you're busy trying to build life and business and home, and everything just gets scattered and cluttered. As you get older and you begin to move into the role of a grandparent, you're more gentle. You're more intuitive to what's going on in your kids' lives, your grandkids' lives rather, and you know how to appeal to them, to motivate them. All of those things. There's value in the older. And this is what I love about Paul's strategy. So if we were to gather at a church conference, a church growth conference with a bunch of pastors, it's interesting what would probably be said. But here's what Paul would say. Start teaching the Bible soundly and gather some old people and make sure they understand some things, right? I mean, that's basically what he's done so far. And he is going to talk to the younger, but always with in mind that the older crowd, because the older you get, older people have a backbone, right? I mean, there's a stability about them. I don't mean a backbone like they say what they think, although there are a lot who do and some who shouldn't do that. But there's stability, whereas a younger person is kind of all over the place. There's wisdom that comes out of the old person. And the scriptures all through say and speak about the fact that they should be honored. And so we have to grab a hold of that and understand what's going on in that realm. So I think it's important that we understand the value of older people. I've always appreciated older people in my life. I've always had older friends. I rarely have I had friends my age. I've had friends that were older than me, and I've had friends that were younger than me, and it's still true, really, in my life today. But I Now, it's harder to find older folk. And the ones that I used to look up to are, I don't see much anymore due to just their COVID limitations and things like that, but deeply appreciate older people. I always loved my parents and Tammy's parents. The last few years of our life, it was just my mom and her dad, and they were some of the most delightful people to be around. They had more life in them than most of the people my age do. There's something powerful about that. They were both seasoned believers, and they loved the Lord, and you could see it in how they treated people. And so let's just look and remind ourselves of what was said about the about the older men. He says older men should be temperate. That is, they're not intoxicated. They're clear-minded. I don't mean intoxicated by drunk. They're not intoxicated by stuff. They've settled themselves down. They're dignified. That is, that they're deeply respected. They carry weight because they've lived a life. Not every old person, but this is what they should strive to be. So they're dignified. They're self-controlled. They have a healed mind. They're they know what's important and what isn't, and that's a powerful thing. They're sound in the faith. In other words, they've walked it, and they know it. You can't rattle them. You can't come along going, well, now there's this new teaching. They're just going to say, hey, shut up, right? I mean, in a kind, older person way, but they're sound in the faith, and then they're sound in love. They're pure in their love, and they persevere. There's no quit in them. They're gonna show up, right? And so now he moves to the area of the women, and he has some qualities for them too. So he says the older women likewise. In other words, basically saying all of those things that apply to the old men, those and these things too. He said in the same vein, rather, they should be reverent in their behavior. It's an interesting term. It's a compound word. Here is prepo, which is it's a temple that's suitable. So it means that when he says older women likewise to be reverent, that they carry themselves as a suitable temple for God himself. Powerful phrase, right? It's in secular use, it was the only word it's used here, but in the scriptures. But in secular areas, it means priest-like. It means holy. So these are the kind of women, because of their character, have access to God. Now, that doesn't mean that we all have access to God. Hebrews tells us that. Let us come boldly before the throne of Christ, having been granted access by the once for all sacrifice. So we all have access. But you realize what we're talking about when we say they kind of have a connection to God in that sense. There's a priest-like kind of a concept to them. We see that in Luke 2. Anna, remember her? Simeon is always a character in Luke 2 when they take Jesus to the temple to get circumcised and all of those things. That Simeon was there and grabbed him and saw that he was the promise. But Anna was there day and night. She never left the temple. And so she had that priest-like quality about her. First Timothy, Paul tells Timothy about older women that are single. They should be put on a list. Doesn't mean to be cared for necessarily. That is a piece of it. But it means that they are to be used and utilized almost as elders. Whereas an elder is a male. Rulers in the church are men, office-wise. But by character and definition, older women put on a list meant that they were to assist the elders really in caring for the women. And so this is who they are, and this is what they're to be about. So when we think about older women, we think this is who they should be. They should be priestly-like. That doesn't mean holy rollers. It doesn't mean whatever it is, like, those negative connotations. It simply means that that they have lived a solid life, and the character of God is in them, and you see it on the outside of them, so that they're reverent in their behavior. I can't help but think of my mom and my wife, really, in that sense. I dare to delve into that, or I make it sound like she's an older woman, although we both are in that framework, that stage. But man, when you listen to my mother pray, or you read the letters that she wrote to people to encourage them, it was full of wisdom and truth and scripture. And this is what he's speaking of, that women should be reverent in their behavior. That is, that they conduct themselves as Christ would. Basically, that's what it boils down to. Then it says, not malicious gossips. Now, I know it's characteristic to always speak of older women or women in general as though they're gossips. And there is some truth to that. Men just tell you like it is and punch you in the face. Women smile to your face and then tell everybody else like it is about you, right? I mean, that's kind of the difference in what happens in men and women. So we both accomplish the same thing, just different venues in a negative way. But the word here, malicious gossip, is the term diabolos. You ever heard that term before? It's used of the devil like a bazillion times in the scriptures. And so he's basically saying that women shouldn't be devils, diabolos, right? And yet malicious gossip is the term here, because that term is characterized of slander, of false accusations, of just being critical to others. And that's exactly what Satan did. He's a liar. He's the father of lies. He falsely accuses everyone, right? He goes before the throne night and day accusing us. And so this is who he is. Now, he says basically women shouldn't go about fault finding, criticizing, and talking about others. Stop that activity. Just because you're older doesn't give you the right to tell it like it is to everybody else. And so he's saying, hey, teach the older women not to do that. In contrast to the world and the way they do it, teach your older women to use their words to uplift, right? This is what he's speaking of. Not to just talk about everybody else. The slander means to speak ill of someone, and it doesn't really matter whether it's truth or not. We think slander, well, I'm just telling the truth. Well, that's slander. If you're demeaning someone to someone else, that is slander. False witness is where you're doing the same thing but telling lies. And so there's no place for just publicly condemning other people and talking about them in negative tones. And this is what he means here. Then he says this, they are not enslaved to much wine. I know it's popular, wine in the word and women in wine and all of those things, but the scripture says, hey, slow down on that. It's interesting when he says enslaved, it's the word doulos. Now, doulos is different than a diakonos in the sense of slavery. A doulos is one who has signed up for that slavery. And basically, that's what he's saying. Hey, don't sign up to be a wino. Don't just willingly allow your body to be taken over by wine. And throughout the scriptures, there's the danger of that. We're not told that we can't drink. Nowhere through there. I realize there are old people, old students of the word that want to say that Jesus didn't drink wine, they could get drunk. But the whole flavor of the scripture says that drinking and drunk, it goes together. And that's the whole, when Jesus turned water into wine, it was powerful wine. That meant it was good, it was rich, it wasn't watered down, it wasn't diluted in any way, it was strong. And so let's just be honest and have that honest conversation. But it should never be abused. And we should be very careful about that. And this is what he's saying. So I would encourage all the women in the world today to throttle back from that. It tends to be, the pendulum swings, and it tends to be right now, hey, it's really cool for women to just to drink, and that's fine if that's what you do. Just don't be drunk with it. And this is what he's saying here. Don't be enslaved to much wine. You get stupid when that happens, don't you? Now, then he says, teaching what is good. That just means good teaching. Your goal isn't to teach other women how to tell her husband off or how to get away with whatever. It is used to build up. And we're going to look at this tomorrow, because he says, I want you to teach, women should be teaching what is good, that they may encourage the young women. The focus of that teaching is to be on the aspect of being a mom and a wife. And so that's what we're going to look at the 7 things tomorrow that young women should focus on and major on. And they're pretty powerful truths, really. And I appreciate so much the scriptures in that vein. But listen, as far as it comes to all of us old folk, let's get our act together. All right, let's grow up. Let's behave. Let's be valuable citizens as we are in our fourth quarter of life, or half time of life, second half, however you want to say it. I feel like I'm still, kind of in the first, but that's mentally where I am. Physically, I'm looking at myself on the camera, and I realize, no, Pardue, you're old. And so let's be the kind of old people that should be honored. And so Lord bless you guys. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.